Hello and welcome to ABC News Radio KMET, AM and FM. I am Paul Lane. So happy to have you with us today. We are going to take a look back at an organization that we have been highlighting and checking in on ever since this pandemic and kind of shut everything down. We're talking about Jehovah's Witnesses and things that they have done during this pandemic to not only keep their members safe, but also you who are in the public as well. So let's catch up with them and find out some things that are going on this year as they continue to highlight safety and spirituality. And I'm so happy to welcome back Robert Hendriks, US spokesperson for the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Robert, so good to see you again. How are you?
It's always good to see you, Paul, and I'm doing very well. Despite the circumstances. You know, we at headquarters here in the United States branch, we've been locked down now it'll be coming up on a year next week. So we feel very privileged to be protected and to be healthy. We're a healthy family, and that's something to be said for when 2,000 people live in such close proximity.
Yeah, and that is mind-blowing, Robert. The fact that 2,000 people living together and still being safe, it really shows the safety protocols that the organization put in place. They really work. I think we as members of each community can learn from the organization on how to live during this pandemic and still stay safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's quite a privilege to be able to be protected like this. So
absolutely. And Robert, what I wanted to do is take a look back at this year coming up, because this is when things kind of shut down for the organization as far as meeting in person and worshiping. Like things have been done for many years. And when we look back, Robert, what has been kind of like the retrospect of this past year, and just some of the adjustments that have been made, but also how ones have benefited from these adjustments?
Well, when you look back in the last year, you have to say nobody could have ever imagined where we'd be today. And I suspect that in a year we'll say the same thing. This has been a historic year in so many different ways. And we've also lost, sadly, thousands of our brothers and sisters to this deadly pandemic. But the response of the organization back a year ago, and it will be almost exactly a year in just really a few days, we look back and we see the wisdom of it. Because even though it felt disorienting in the beginning, frankly, I think us meeting on a virtual platform, the suspension of the public ministry, the memorial, which was just a few weeks away, what would we do? And then the cancellation of our regional conventions. These all were kind of earth-shattering events for us, and it happened progressively. And it has, when we look back, we recognize that the decisions that have been made have been very wise.
That is so true, Robert. And when we look at our discussions that we've had over this past year, and especially when it comes to the meetings and how virtually this has been done, and really how the organization and the members have really appreciated. And when you look back at some of the responses of ones who were able to take and use this provision, Robert, what has been, I guess, the biggest takeaway from that the organization has looked at?
Well, I guess, again, you think back a year ago where we were. It's kind of cute because my congregation in our local news part this week, they showed a picture of us 1 year ago this week, and there were 10 people at the hall, because they were only allowed to be 10, who set up the meeting and for the first time transmitted it through, I think it was Zoom at the time. I know that some started on different platforms in the beginning. And then I can remember having the first public talk, the first virtual public talk in our congregation. And now to look at what we've accomplished in this year is the only thing we can attribute it to is God's blessing. And I say that because almost immediately, right after we kind of collected ourselves and just said, okay, this is the new reality, it's not going away, the meeting attendance swelled. Even in our congregation, it was announced this week that over that year, we have our average attendance at the meetings was about 120, and it has mushroomed to over 170 at the meetings, and that's, while that seems to be a big jump. Part of it is because people aren't traveling, but so many have come back to the congregation. So many inactive ones have become active again. Many have found the truth for the first time. And what we're seeing really around the country, and we have heard no other reports to the contrary, what we are seeing is 5, 10, 15, 20% increases. And you think, okay, that's going to happen right away. Just in 9/11, our meeting attendance swelled, churches swelled, right? But it has been sustained for the last year. And so people have not only come back curiously, but they have made it a new way of their life. And that's really been gratifying to see, not just those who have been Jehovah's Witnesses in the past, not just those inactive ones, but also Bible studies that have made great progress. Those who have been contacted through letter writing and telephone witnessing some have even been baptized. Some who have never seen the inside of a Kingdom Hall, some who have never attended a live convention, some who have never knocked on a door. Now, if you asked me a year ago if that was possible, I would say, well, there's no precedent for it. I would never call anything. Jesus said all things are possible with God. Well, we've seen possibilities this year that we never even imagined. So we've been fooled again, like Jeremiah.
And Robert, when we look at the ministry, we know that ones associate Jehovah's Witnesses with the door-to-door ministry. Comedians talk about it. You'll see it in movies, bringing reference to it. How was the organization able to continue to do this effectively? I'm not sure if the organization saw some of the ones who have gotten letters. They would post it like on social media sites. They would post it on different formats saying, this is how much the witnesses care about me. I got a handwritten letter. And when you look at just the response of the ministry, Robert, what has been the feedback that the organization has gotten?
The feedback has been amazing. And you know, again, you look back and when our ministry was suspended, I've been in the truth all my life. I was dedicated at 15 years old, but I grew up in a Jehovah's Witness household, and I made my dedication at 15. And I can remember knocking on doors when I can remember back, I was a publisher of, knocking on doors at 6 years old. So, and all of a sudden, and as you grow up, you think, well, our preaching work someday is going to end. Perhaps it's going to be outlawed, like it is in China, like it is in Russia, where people can't actually go and visit people and talk about the Bible, and in other places around the world, in many lands. You think the government's going to do that. But when you get a letter from your organization that says the ministry is suspended, and that kind of rocks you. And I think that it's, again, I use the term disorienting. I think for the first few weeks it was. And so when we sat down to write letters or do telephone witnessing, we began, because we kind of thought this is going to pass. Let's write to everyone we know. Let's write to formal Bible studies, those maybe family members who need some comfort. Everybody needed comfort. So I think many of us started with those that we know or knew. And then we realized, wait a minute, this is not going to end. And so congregations began to really organize very efficiently and effectively the telephone witnessing and letter writing, and all of a sudden we began to see and hear reports of congregations that were actually accomplishing their territories, finishing their area where they would oversee, finishing that ministry in a more efficient and effective way and getting to more people. I don't think any of us expected that. But I have to say that this is not a mistake. It's not by chance. Not only is it the blessing of God, because he wants us to continue our witnessing. Why? We're witnesses, Jehovah's Witnesses. From the Latin, witness comes from the Latin word a testimonium. We testify about our God. That's what we do. That's who we are, right? But for decades, I want to say for really the majority of the past 50 years, this organization has continued to encourage us to have alternative forms of witnessing. You know, in the last 10 or 15 years, you go out on a Saturday morning and you could do 50 doors and get 48 not homes. But so there was always a need, and they were always training us telephone witnessing. We've had encouragement to do letter writing, to approach people at different times in different ways. And all of a sudden now, all of that training that many of us, including myself, frankly, did not put into practice, all of a sudden, not only were we being asked to, we now had to. If we were going to continue our ministry, which is our mandate, it's the mandate from our Lord Jesus Christ, we needed to find a way to do it, and this was the way. And amazingly, it's been quite a success, really branch-wide, really worldwide. We've seen the results.
And Robert, when we look at, you mentioned the word training. The witnesses are trained to do these certain things, and it really shows that when you are trained and prepared, it comes across in the way one presents certain things. And no doubt, looking at all the letters that we received at the station and everything, it really shows that witnesses are really taking this message and this commission really seriously. And we talked last year about the conventions, and those conventions were just, using the word again, I'm repeating myself, mind-blowing. How many ones were able to watch and be affected by that? And I know the ones who are in the dramas and dictations are not to be praised or looked at because of their performance, but just the impact of the message. And things that I've heard from ones who've attended that meeting was the convention was just how down to earth and realistic one saw themselves in the different video dramas, or the different reenactments, or the different soliloquies, or the different presentations out there. One saw themselves in that, Robert. And it seems like the organization really does a great job of making sure that things are realistic, that ones can see themselves. And do you mind commenting on that, please?
Well, no doubt. If it's not realism, if it's not accessible, then it's not going to teach, to leave an impression. You know, when you really come to think about it, that's how Jesus taught. He taught with the elements of the day, the things that were right around them. And he used very familiar expressions, very familiar illustrations. And the reason why he did that is because he wanted to hit their heart, not just convey information. Information is important because it's got to satisfy the mind. But really, it also needs to move the heart. And so our motivation needs to be to serve our God. And we were motivated last year by that convention. And I think just the concept and the thought of a convention that was planned many years before, at this time in history, at this moment in time, which had the theme of joy, it just always rejoice. How do you make that up? You know, what could have possibly been more important to talk about than maintaining your joy in a time in last summer when the whole world was reeling, when really the economic system, the educational system, the system of government all kind of came to its knees and affected our lives in a profound way. We needed that so badly. And so to show real life people who are just like us, scenarios that would affect us and help us to live our life, that really, it was exactly the right information at exactly the right moment in time.
Yeah. When you watch that, you're like, I see myself right there. I see myself right there. I have those same type of struggles, and it really has an impact when ones feel that it's normal to be imperfect. You know, sometimes we have this thought that if we have a struggle, then there's something fundamentally flawed with us. But to see how you see individuals who have struggles, but because of God's word, they're able to make those adjustments in their life. It really encourages everyone out there who's trying to do their best out there, Robert, and we really appreciate the impact of that. Absolutely. So, Robert, I want to burden you. You mind if we take a quick break, and I'll have you come back, and we'll talk about the virtual campaign. We know last year we talked about the virtual campaign of God's Kingdom, but there's a campaign going on right now that is so important that we'll touch on that when we come back right after this break. Can I hold you over, Robert?
It would be a pleasure, Paul.